All right. We have here, I see Soil King typing, but I would say Soil King, maybe wait. I'm gonna read the questions here and maybe we can answer it on the call. Might be best. If that's okay with you, Silo Chad.
Yeah. Yeah, we could do both.
No
Great.
problem.
Epic. And appreciate your questions, Mr. Chad. So Silo Chad. Did I say Soil Chad? Did I say Soil Chad before?
You called him Soil King, so I think you mixed him up.
I mean, if we had a baby or
Well, I
something,
was typing, but yeah.
Yeah, what's
No,
the
I was
baby's name?
shoot me a DM
Yeah.
so we'll get something moving.
Is it the Soil Chad or the Silo King? Or is that, you know, that's like future rivals?
Yeah, we leave some
Early-
names for the future farmers.
The grandsons of early Beanstalk adopters are feuding in this new, I don't know. All right. Silo Chad asks, what is the best way to view clean Beanstalk data today? Basin Exchange shows liquidity on mainnet, which isn't helpful. Is there a single place that shows all token amounts from this chart, for example? Did the data dashboard I built a while back get updated properly for the ARB migration? Soil King, care to answer?
Sure. So regarding Basin Exchange, you just need to switch the network. There should be a way to switch from ETH mainnet to Arbitrum. And I mean, the reason both are on there is because like the pools are still deployed, and there actually is like some liquidity still on the ETH pools. But yeah, you should just be able to switch it. For the token amounts on the chart, I guess I'm not really sure what you're asking specifically. I mean, I guess those are the dollar values instead of the token amount. So yeah, I mean, obviously it's like, on chain. I don't think we have all those LP tokens tracked in the subgraphs. I know we have the bean amount. And then as for the dashboard, yes, that did get updated.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, the main thing I was trying to figure out is, where can I see the token values easily? We had previously created that like Beanstalk dashboard, in part for this purpose, because the UI obfuscates a lot of stuff to make it simple for all farmers alike. But for simple things like, how many tokens are underlying the unripe tokens, for example. Just wondering what the best place to see all of that is.
Yeah, that should be on the dashboard site, if I'm not mistaken. I'll look. Yeah, there's like a total underlying in the unripe section. I don't know if you see that. I'm seeing 27 million beans.
Cool, and those are all, as far as you understand, like working correctly. I know in the past there's been a lot of inconsistency about that kind of stuff. So
yeah, this should all be correct. I remember updating this like a while back. So as far as I know, everything on here is accurate.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Chad?
yeah, I'm gonna have to spend some more time digging on it. But I think it's getting there.
Great. All right, I see here, Mr. Chad, you've been a busy man, as is typical for you. Always impressed by your output. You want to present this proposal that you just dropped?
Frankly, not too much to present. I can kind of speak to it a little bit, and I'm pasting it in as I go to get around the Discord message limits. So bear with me. But one thing, kind of the motivation here is I've noticed over the lifetime of Beanstalk that we've had a lot of team, community, etc. calls around all sorts of possibilities of where Beanstalk could go, different options for helping improve the protocol, get things back on track. And I think a lot of times what I've noticed is that those conversations kind of die in the town hall. And so something I'm trying to do here is, basically I took the transcript of our previous conversation, and just spent a little time with AI, with the Beanstalk docs, and a bunch of other resources related to the protocol, and just tried to pump out what a proposal would look like to give us a little bit more concrete points of discussion for a conversation like this. So hopefully this can be a little bit more fruitful. For the sake of having something concrete, I just picked the automated conversion mechanism that we talked about last time. But I'll paste the summary from our call last time, which, there was a couple of other ideas we talked about, and I'm happy to help, knock out a proposal from for those as well. This is all like basically straight out of an AI conversation that I'm having, and so take it with a grain of salt. A lot of these I haven't like actually rigorously pulled on, but gives us something to start working with.
Cool. And are you gonna post the rest of it, or it's just this one message?
So if you look in general right now, it's about 2 p.m. Eastern time for people who are doing this from the recording on March 20th.
Oh, you posted it in the thread itself.
Yeah, so I included a summary, farmer's summary, if you will, and then in the actual thread there's the longer proposal.
Wow. This is dope. Do you think it would be a good use of time to go through it here together as a group?
I think so. And to help us formulate a bit of a conversation here, I'm going to paste one last thing at the end real quick, which is discussion questions. So I think last time, basically, let me just back out a sec. What we're seeing here is a proposal written by AI based on the conversation we had talking about what an automated convert mechanism would look like for Unripe. And then, just taking into account all of the Beanstalk documentation. So basically all of the Farmer's Almanac. And I think the goal here is basically to say, like, what are the relevant follow-up questions for us to discuss on this call to figure out if this is a viable idea or not, or to spend some more time, iterating on this basic proposal. So I pulled a couple example questions at the end, which, maybe Ben or I don't know if Brendan's here, but you guys would be the best to sort of speak to. But hopefully this is a helpful starting point.
Thank you for taking the initiative, Chad, really. So it's quite a lengthy proposal. I mean, I'm curious. Maybe we just leave a minute to see if there's anything else people want to use this time for. Otherwise, we can probably just read it from the top and talk about it. So I'll leave the floor open for like 30 seconds, and then unless anyone has any other topics they want to introduce, we can spend the majority of this session reading and then maybe discussing this proposal from Mr. Silo Chad. All right. Silo Chad, do you want to read it? You want me to read it?
I'll let you read it, and feel free to, like, as you go, jump in with thoughts. I think this is about as far as I can take the initial version, but happy to use this as a jumping off point for a discussion.
Great. Summary. Beanstalk is currently struggling because a large portion of its assets are held by inactive users who aren't helping maintain the price stability of beans. Think of it like a seesaw that needs people actively moving around to stay balanced, but most people are just sitting still. This has caused the price of beans to fall significantly below its target of $1 and stay there for an extended period. The proposed auto-convert mechanism would allow the protocol itself to automatically switch between different types of assets when needed to push the price back towards 1. Currently, these conversions only happen when users manually choose to do them. The new system would be like having an automatic transition in your car instead of a manual one. The protocol would make the necessary shifts without requiring user action especially helpful for balancing out the inactive, unripe assets that are currently stuck in the system. By implementing this change, Beanstalk could more effectively manage its available liquidity, potentially restoring the price stability that's essential for a functioning stablecoin. Users who remain active would face no penalties during these automatic conversions, while long inactive accounts would gradually incur small stock penalties when their assets are converted. This balanced approach, I don't understand what this means. Users who remain active would face no penalties, while long inactive. So once they do start using the system, is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, let's see here.
Maybe let me
Sounds
just
like
finish the last.
the people who are auto converted incur stock penalties. What I read.
I think it says yeah. So if you're not converting yourself, we're now sort of imposing some cost on not converting. So it's not a bonus for converting; it's a cost if you don't convert.
Yeah, I guess there's a couple of ways to do this, and for what it's worth, this summary is written from the call we had, and so that it's kind of incorporating a couple of different ideas. But I can see a world where, just to break this out, and maybe we do have separate proposals or lines of thinking for each of these. But one form is all unripe. No users can convert their own unripe. Beanstalk converts all of it. That's number one. Number two would look something like, if you don't convert unripe for some window of time, Beanstalk takes over. And potentially there's a penalty associated with that as well to incentivize people to do it themselves and be active participants. Obviously, all of this is barring the actual, economic and philosophical implications of that, but just for the sake of like technically how it would work.
Great. The summary continues. This balanced approach aims to respect user ownership while breaking through the current gridlock to revive the protocol's core functionality, potentially creating a path back to healthy operation without requiring drastic measures like completely restarting the system. That's the summary. Then below it, we have a more formal proposal. BibXX, automated bean conversion mechanism. Summary. This proposal outlines an auto-convert mechanism for Beanstalk that would enable the protocol to automatically convert between deposited assets based on peg conditions and protocol health metrics. This mechanism aims to restore Beanstalk's peg maintenance capabilities by addressing inactive liquidity, particularly from unripe asset holders. By implementing protocol-controlled conversions, Beanstalk can more effectively manage its debt level, maintain proper liquidity to supply ratios, and restore bean price stability. I'm wondering, should we read the whole thing? Yeah, I think we have time. All right, lock in, ladies and gentlemen. Motivation. Beanstalk's peg maintenance currently relies on active participation from stockholders performing conversions in response to price signals. However, a significant portion of protocol value is locked in unripe assets held by inactive participants who acquired these tokens following the 2022 exploit. I would maybe add with no activity required on their end. These holders receive neither seeds nor incentives to participate in peg maintenance activities. This structural issue has resulted in several critical problems. The inactive nature of unripe asset holders has created effectively dead liquidity within the system. Despite representing approximately $4 million in exogenous value, the vast majority of exogenous value still in the protocol, this liquidity remains inaccessible for peg maintenance. The pod rate remains elevated and the bean price has reached historic lows, resulting in Beanstalk's least healthy state since inception. Traditional mechanisms like increasing the temperature or adjusting the crop ratio have proven insufficient since they cannot influence inactive participants. Without intervention, Beanstalk risks permanent displacement from its peg, undermining its utility as a stablecoin.
Perhaps
Specification.
before going on to the spec, maybe let's take a minute and so far do we agree, or at least does this motivation sound correct?
Well, I think the main point which you capture here is that there are no seeds for unripe at the moment, and the result is that the conversion incentives that typically are at play are not for unripe assets. And 99+% of the liquidity trading against beans is held by unripe asset holders. So the conversion mechanism is sort of dead at the moment, which I think is totally on the money.
For what it's worth, you mentioned that the seed incentives aren't at play for unripe assets. However, the max crop ratio is 1-to-1, and the seed difference between unripe LP and unripe beans is already 1-to-1. So I would argue the incentives are the same, at least with respect to seeds.
But I thought there was no longer seeds for unripe assets.
That's correct.
So then what are you saying? I'm sorry, I'm not following.
Well, I'm saying that the seed, you're talking about how the seed incentives don't apply to unripe assets anymore with respect to the incentive to convert up, for example. Given enough time under PEG, just making the claim that even for non-unripe assets, the difference in incentives in terms of seeds are also 1-to-1. So it's like, in that sense, you convert incentives up for unripe assets and non-unripe assets are equivalent in terms of seeds.
Totally. Totally. I think the point highlighted in the proposal, though, is that the liquidity is almost entirely unripe. So even though the crop ratio for normal assets is 1-to-1, which is separately perhaps an improper parameterization, the bigger point here is that almost all of the liquidity trading against the protocol is actually totally oblivious to the seed gauge or seed system.
Definitely. I was just sort of making a more marginal point that don't think the seeds have a big impact at this point on unripe converting or not converting, even if they had seeds.
Does that answer your question, Chad?
I think so.
Great. So let's move on to the specification. The proposed auto-convert mechanism would operate as follows. Core functionality. The protocol would gain the ability to automatically convert between asset types when specific conditions are met, prioritizing conversions that return the bean price to its peg. This would occur through a protocol-controlled function rather than requiring user-initiated transactions. Conversion thresholds. Automatic conversions would trigger based on delta B measurements across wells on the minting whitelist. When delta B exceeds a predetermined threshold in either direction for a sustained period, e.g. 3 consecutive seasons, the protocol would initiate appropriate conversions. If delta B is persistently negative, the protocol converts from LP tokens to beans. If delta B is persistently positive, the protocol converts from beans to LP tokens. Conversion capacity. To prevent MEV exploitation and flash loan attacks, conversions would be subject to per block capacity limits. These limits would be proportional to historical conversion volumes with separate caps for each well. The mechanism would use a Dutch auction approach, converting the most advantageous positions first.
Just gonna jump in here and say that haven't thought at all about that like MEV side, and this is just straight out of the docs and AI, but definitely gives us a jumping off point.
What do you mean by Dutch auction?
Let's see. I'd say ignore that piece for now. I guess I think the thing that it's going for here is some positions are better to convert than others. I think that's right. Maybe better for the farmer, I guess. For the protocol, it's probably all about the same. So maybe that line doesn't matter as much. But I think the spirit of it is that there's there's some limitations on how much should be converted, and potentially also an ordering of what should be converted first.
Well, on the limits of how much to convert, I think that makes sense, although don't know if it solves the whole MEV problem. I think we can iterate on that. On the Dutch auction part, I don't know if it makes sense to me because it's sort of like converting the entire liquidity at once or not, I would think. So not exactly sure what the auctioning process would be given users are inactive. So I'm gonna sort of continue as if that sentence is not there, if that's okay with you, Chad.
Right.
Stock penalty mechanism. The proposal incorporates a graduated stock penalty system to maintain fairness while encouraging active participation. Active deposits, those that have performed transactions within 90 days, would face no penalties for auto conversion. Inactive deposits would incur a partial grown stock penalty proportional to the percentage of their assets being converted. This basically would scale the penalty by some penalty multiplier based on their inactivity duration from 10% for deposits inactive for 90 to 100 days to 50% of deposits inactive over 365 days. So that would be either a linear curve or some other curve that sets the penalty multiplier as a function of time of inactivity. Implementation path. The auto convert mechanism would be implemented through a new facet in Beanstalk Diamond. Technical considerations. I'm skipping some of this just because it's quite dense. Use multi-flow, yada yada. Happy to go into any of these specific technical specifications if you think it's pretty short. I guess I'll just read it. The mechanism would leverage Beanstalk's existing multi-flow infrastructure to obtain manipulation-resistant prices. Conversions would be executed incrementally across multiple seasons to minimize market impact and prevent excessive slippage. For unripe assets, special handling would ensure that conversions maintain proper BDV accounting and don't impact the total percent of fertilizer sold or underlying ripe asset claims. The mechanism would require the existing convert whitelist, only automating conversions that would already be permissible if manually initiated by users. Benefits. This proposal would create several significant benefits for Beanstalk. 1. Restore effective peg maintenance capabilities by allowing protocol-controlled liquidity management. 2. Provide a pathway for inactive liquidity to contribute to protocol health. 3. Increase Beanstalk's resilience by reducing dependency on active user participation. 4. Potentially accelerate recovery of the bean price to its peg. 5. Generate valuable experimental data on automated stabilization mechanisms. Almost done here, folks. Risks and mitigations. The proposal acknowledges several risks and provides corresponding mitigations. Governance concerns. This represents a significant departure from Beanstalk's current design philosophy, which requires active user participation, mitigated by implementing sufficient checks and balances through governance. Technical implementation risk. Complex automated systems could have unintended consequences, mitigated through comprehensive testing, capacity limits, and an emergency pause feature. Economic design changes. Modifying incentive structures could impact Beanstalk's theoretical soundness. Mitigated by preserving most original economic mechanisms while only addressing structural impediments. MEV and Oracle manipulation. Automated conversions could create opportunities for exploitation. Mitigation through multi-block Oracle averages and strict transaction ordering rules. Conclusion. The auto-convert mechanism represents a targeted intervention to address a specific structural challenge in Beanstalk's current state. While it modifies aspects of Beanstalk's original design, it preserves the core credit-based model while creating pathways for recovery. By activating currently dormant liquidity, Beanstalk can potentially restore its peg maintenance capabilities and demonstrate the resilience of its economic model. This proposal acknowledges that successful stablecoin protocols must adapt to changing conditions while maintaining their fundamental principles. The auto-convert mechanism strikes this balance by addressing a specific challenge with minimal disruption to Beanstalk's overall design. There are 3 discussion questions here, but we'll wait to get to those to see if Silo Chat or anyone else has anything they want to add. All right. So a couple things I want to comment on before we get to the questions posed by Chad. First, existentially, there is a question as to how the game theory changes if the protocol is now sort of telling the market that if there is no additional user activity in perpetuity in the future, that it will still return the price of a bean to its value peg. It's like, well, if I was going to leave the system at 40 cents and dump my beans, but now I know that over time, one of two things is going to happen. Either the bean price will return to its value peg, in which case I'll be able to exit at $1 or very close to $1, or the protocol will run out of liquidity entirely before it gets to $1. Versus in the current situation, the protocol is just sitting on $4 million of exogenous value. And there's an open question as to whether or not that value will ever get used. And used maybe isn't the most accurate term, but whether it will ever get used in order to bring the bean price back to its value peg. And that uncertainty, on the one hand, bean is below peg and shows no sign of returning to its peg anytime soon. And so you could look at that and say, clearly, this system is poorly designed. But on the other hand, or maybe not poorly designed, but it's not properly designed. But on the other hand, as soon as you introduce this guarantee effectively that all of the liquidity will be used to repeg the system, it changes people's behavior quite significantly, or I would think it might. And even if you say, okay, well, the system will convert up to 80 cents and nothing more, I think the same dynamic is generally at play. Anytime you're below 80 cents, the people that are willing to sell below whatever that target price is that the protocol will auto convert back to goes down significantly. And in practice, I think that such a mechanism would effectively instate something like the Terra Luna conversion system, where the UST was convertible to Luna at par, at the value target, at $1. And the result of this hard conversion rule, where the protocol said, independent of supply and demand imbalances, it will honor the ability to convert or redeem $1 worth of Terra for $1 worth of Luna. The problem with that is that it basically made it such that the game theory that I just laid out was bound to play out at some point, where the protocol didn't have enough liquidity to backstop every UST at its value peg, but promised to do so. And the result is a bank run that ultimately killed the system. So I think we have to be super hyper careful and cautious with such a proposal as this. And as much as I see the potential fruit for saying, hey, the unripe holders are not participating and that's killing the system, to implement this mechanism like a one-off repeg where the stockholders have to vote and then it happens, and it's executed in a way where it's low risk and low MEV, like that's one thing. But to implement it into the protocol in perpetuity, where above and below peg, the protocol is now sort of mandating conversions to forcibly keep the system in a certain state, I think that would likely be the kiss of death for the protocol. So from where I sit, like the only way that this is safe to do, and even then it would be truly questionable as to whether or not it is safe, would be to do this as like a one-off, protocol hasn't done anything, no money's coming in and out, let's repeg the system and see how much liquidity is left. Curious what you think of that reasoning, Chad and others.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear more from the others here. I think the logic follows with respect to the Terra Luna comparison and those sorts of things. I wonder if there's something here to consider that I think when you look at Terra Luna, the principle you mentioned was built into the entire protocol, whereas in the context of Beanstalk, it would be limited just to unripe. And of course, unripe is the bulk of the protocol at this time. But if it's sort of one of those things where if it works, it actually phases itself out quite naturally as people discard their unripe or unripe, becomes less of a percentage of the overall system as time goes on. So I think that it's worth considering, but it's worth considering that maybe the outcome would be different in the case where it's not the protocol's principle for all liquidity, if that makes sense.
I mean, it definitely makes sense that it would be phased out. So even if it's not a one-time exclusive thing, it would still be toned down over time. I still think that it makes more sense as a one-time thing. Like in otherwise, it feels like the protocol is basically committing to burn the $4 million of exogenous value it has left. And I don't know if that is the best way to handle it, if that makes sense.
I don't have much new perspective to add other than came in quite open to the idea of some sort of auto convert mechanism, but follow Ben's logic quite clearly that it is likely to end up in resulting in losing more liquidity faster as a result of guaranteeing that people can sell at higher prices at some point in the future.
I mean, I'm interested in like one-off, like slow. There's a question as to how to implement it to be MEV resistant, but I'm interested in like a one-off slow repeg using the existing liquidity that would likely have a lot of the liquidity drained from people chopping, like just a full, all right, everyone will have a chance to leave from $0 to $1, and then after that, like, unclear what would happen to the system, honestly. We'd probably have like $1 million or $2 left in liquidity and a ton of debt, and its price would be back at peg, but unclear what would happen at that point. And I guess I mean unclear here, like unclear what positive catalyst would actually lead the system to grow even then, from where I sit.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that if there were some proposal such that it was developed and there was a BIP that was being voted on that the price was going to be converted from right now at 23 cents up to $1. Like were it looking like that proposal were going to pass, like I would argue that external capital would be like flying in and the price would get to $1 like before the converts even started. And then I'm assuming they would that same capital would then immediately exit.
In an efficient market, I think that is certainly what would happen. In our market, unclear how much demand there would be to make that trade, but definitely the case that would be the efficient thing to do.
So,
and there's no way to stop it.
Exactly. From my perspective, it's just so gameable. Like it would have to somehow happen with nobody knowing about it, but that's of course not possible.
Agreed.
Is that resolved at all by doing it over an extended period of time? Not really.
Not really, unless
It would have
like
to be like
years.
a really long. Yeah.
I mean, what was the time frame that you were thinking of when you said slowly, like a minute ago, Ben?
Well,
Months.
I think it would have to. It would have to happen at some predetermined, but not pre-disclosed cadence.
I mean, if we're talking about like a 4x return on capital from buying at 23 cents, call it 25 cents, right? Like it's a good trade if it happens within, even a few years, like that's like a really like it's a great return.
Yeah,
So
but if you don't know the time horizon and you don't know the amount of chops and volume that will leave before you have a chance to do it, like you're still betting that the protocol
True.
won't be entirely drained of liquidity. There's a question of how much size can you exit with. I don't think it's a sure bet, but it's definitely a pretty good trade to make, I think.
yeah,
At
I
least
guess
in
what I'm
small
suggesting is
size.
like, years, not months, from my perspective.
Yeah, I don't think it would be it definitely wouldn't be like 3 months and not be gameable. And then there's a trust question, like who is actually doing this? How are they trusted?
Well, I mean, it could be like baked into the seasons or the sunrise or something. Like at, certain seasons.
I'm just saying who's setting the cadence, if you know what I mean.
Well, that would be in the BIP, presumably.
No, I'm saying that would have to be hidden.
Huh.
Even if it were every season over the course of years,
It would that
small amount.
I think every season still doesn't work because that's even gameable. You'd have to have it like do it like real time continuously, like implied by the time since the BIP was passed or something.
What do you mean by that?
Every time someone interacts with Beanstalk, like there's like a hook at the beginning of the transaction that updates the pools or something.
Can you restate why that would be necessary?
So that because it's like, let's say no one has interacted with the protocol for a month, or even for a season, right? For an hour, and now the price is going to jump from X to Y, in an instant when the sunrise is called. People can now bid up the price to Y. Then the protocol, or up to halfway from X to Y or something, the protocol will convert from halfway up to Y, and then you can sell from Y. You can do that atomically and just extract value. So, but the implementation isn't even the problem. The problem is more the attack Tommy's talking about, where if people know that the price is going to go up, then they're going to bid the price up. From where I sit, this is a very dangerous proposal. I'm curious if anyone else has anything they want to add or comment on this discussion.
Classic has posted a couple messages in the Barnyard chat if you want to read them out. Otherwise, I can.
Classic says, you're not afraid it will open the run on unripe beans afterwards and beans too. The problem of that capital coming in is we have no fees right now, so we don't capture any long-term value from that. Yeah, I just don't like the idea, to be frank. I don't like the idea, just to be frank. I don't like it either. All right. We are a little over 45 minutes here. I think this discussion was very productive. I'm very grateful to you, Silo Chat, for taking a first step and throwing out a proposal.
You bet. If it's helpful, I added notes from the last call, and there were a couple of other things that were discussed. This is just a summary of what we talked about, but happy to talk about any other any other potential plans. But I think it would be good to get towards making either a decision to try to do something or do nothing. And it seems like there's still a couple of ideas floating around.
Yeah, I mean, on this front, I don't like the idea that currently nothing is being done. Like, in my mind, the Pinto fork was the optimal thing to be done, including to be done in the name of Beanstalk, and it's happening. And a lot is being done on that front. So even though the original protocol is not, being touched at the moment, I push back pretty heavily on the idea that nothing is happening. So I'm very interested in the discourse around what additional things to do, but not sure I subscribe to in fact, I don't subscribe to the idea that nothing is happening. Classic says, the big problems I see Bean have right now that stops me from slowly buying is lack of fees and lack of liquidity it gets over time that is locked into the protocol. If either get fixed, I can see a reason to buy Bean. I know from a coding perspective, more expensive, but yay, from a fundamental problem in my IMHO, I never know if that's in my humble opinion or in my honest opinion, feels only way to get long tail value. Yeah, I think there's something to be honest. In their honest opinion, feels only way to get long tail value. I think this is something that's been talked about a bit in the Pinto community about adding a fee to swaps. Definitely a good idea. All right, does anyone else have anything they want to add to the discussion? Great. All right, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Silo Chad, for your proposal. I feel like we're getting somewhere, even if it's slowly. And Rome wasn't built in a day. Thank you, everyone.
Hey, everyone.
Bye.